Hi, Michaela with Michaela's Counseling here. Here to talk about, I did a video on transference some time back, and today I want to do a video on the other side of the equation, which is countertransference. I'll quickly recap the other video and I'll also link it below in the description if you want to check out that one. Transference is the reaction that we as clients can have towards our therapists. It's actually the reactions that we have, any kind of reaction that we have, though, even in day-to-day life, that's just a transfer of an earlier feeling to a current relationship. And I talked in that video about what a cool opportunity transference is. I kind of love it and love working with it. Today I'm going to talk about countertransference, which is also an amazing opportunity. And I'm going to talk about some of the ways that I look at that, some of the ways that I navigate that, and some things that you might want to understand about it as a client. Because if you are in counseling, if you've been in counseling, if you've had problematic relationships where you find people treating you in eerily familiar ways, what you're probably dealing with, at least in part, is a countertransferential reaction that people have to you. So transference, countertransference. Countertransference is in the context of therapy or counseling, it's the feelings that your provider has towards you. So I had a client once who would talk about some of the things going on in her life, and we had this fascinating thing going on where I always had a desire to give her advice, to offer different answers, to tell her about something I'd read that could be of help in her situation. Here's the rub. A big part of her situation was that people in her life were domineering with her and were always offering her the answers. And here I am, her counselor, to help her break the cycle, right, of dependency on other people's answers. And what am I doing? I'm offering answers. She's felt interrupted in her relationship. She's felt silenced. And here I am barging in with my ideas and my techniques, right? So that's a counter-transference response, and they're fascinating because a lot of the time before they're explored or before one or both people notices what's going on, what's happening is there's actually a repetition of the problem relationship. So it's just reading David Wallen, who talks about attachment therapy, and he was talking about how we're always struggling with this dynamic tension between the old and the new, between the experience that we've had for most of our lives and for the desire to co-create a new experience. And this happens for clients. This also happens for counselors, where we will sometimes accidentally evoke parts of your old experience. We don't know that we're doing it. We're responding in a way that we feel is useful. And we respond in ways that you may not even know, that you might be kind of enlisting in some way. But our job as counselors is to actually be able to recognize these, to be able to step back and to be able to put words to it, or to at least be aware in our own consciousness. So with that client that I kept giving answers to, I did a couple things. One thing I did was I just had an aha moment of, wow, we're talking about all these people who interrupt her, and how many times have I interrupted her while we've talked about the issue with interruption. So that was a part of my thought process, and then really looking and exploring internally, like, what was happening for me. So part of what was happening for me was I was responding to something where I felt like she was kind of implicitly asking for guidance. There was kind of this feeling of like an entreaty, like, please help me solve this problem. Like, I can't figure it out and I need somebody's guidance, right? The other thing is that when I gave advice, she would respond in a way that looked really favorable. And so, in some way, I get to feel like the helpful counselor, right? Like, here she comes to save the day, and I've got, all these ideas. But the thing is, she wasn't going to get the healing that she was coming in for, and our pattern wasn't going to break until I was able to actually notice, okay, so here's what's happening in me, here's what appears to be happening with her, and here's the dynamic that we seem to be repeating. And so there are a couple options for counselors here. I mean, one option obviously is to keep going that direction, but generally, once someone with some knowledge about this kind of thing knows what they're doing, they're going to work to interrupt the pattern. So we've got options. We've got an option of actually working to change our own behavior and working to change the dynamic. We also have the option, what some people call making the implicit explicit. So I could have said to her, hey, let's pretend her name was Sarah. Hey, Sarah, I'm noticing that as we're working with this problem you have with people interrupting you, I'm really feeling the desire to interrupt, or I keep finding that I want to give you advice, even though that's the exact thing that has been kind of tripping you up or making you feel not so smart. And a lot of the time I don't figure I've got the whole answer, but what is so cool about being able to put words to this with somebody who's far enough advanced in the work with me, or far enough advanced in kind of their introspection, who's really curious about what might be going on, is that they will actually start to make some associations with what they're doing. And the lovely thing about really co-creating a new experience is that if I can work with Sarah in a way that she's able to come to me and we're able to have a conversation that feels collaborative, that feels connective, she is going to have much more ability then to walk into her other relationships and be able to break that pattern of her acting like the one who's kind of entreating people and other people feeling like they're just, riding in on their white horses and rescuing her. And the thing about that was it was a really debilitating pattern, and I found that when I started really listening, when I started leaning back in response to something that she was working with and really started to let her find some of her own ideas and some of her own feelings, she's brilliant. And she had a lot to say and a lot to offer. And so a piece of unlocking that was for me to actually recognize how I was getting into the role with her, to help her recognize how she might be accidentally kind of reinforcing other people when they get into the role. So I may not say, hey, you seem to be enlisting this from me. I feel like that's a little bit blaming. There's always two people in these dynamics, but certainly I could point out if she was reinforcing something or making me feel really good for offering solutions when actually that wasn't what she needed in that scenario. So there are so many different ways that this can play out. And by the way, the countertransference feeling, I just want to separate this out a little bit. The countertransference would be my feeling of wanting to be the advice giver, wanting to kind of rescue her from what looked like confusion. That's countertransference, and it can be had without acting on it quite as overtly as I did in that situation. What we actually did, what me and this like Sarah did, it's called an enactment, and that's when we actually, it's almost like you if you've been through a lifetime of a lot of the same pattern repeating, it's almost like you walk into relationships with a script, and it's almost like a reverse miracle that no matter how the relationship starts, no matter what your initial intentions are, it's like, oh, darn it, here we are again. So here I am, and I'm being the dependent person, and this person is being the savior. And eventually, I'm going to get really resentful, and I'm going to strike out, and I'm going to chase them away, right? That's an enactment, that is a script, and that's going to be something that you experienced really early on. And there are theories that the reason that we walk into these darn things, the reason that we keep kind of implicitly handing other people in our relationship the script, it's not that we want to keep feeling oppressed or keep feeling angry or keep pushing people away. It's like there's something in us that has a drive to figure it out, to transcend it, to master it somehow, and to find a new experience with somebody. So the real gift of countertransference is that if you have a counselor who's willing to really notice what their feelings are towards you and is willing to use that as information that can help guide the work, it can be tremendously helpful. And like I said, some people will make it explicit. Hey, I've noticed that you've said this is a response other people have to you. This is something that I'm feeling towards you right now. Could we explore that, right? Like that might be one way that they do it. And the other way that they do it might actually be some therapists will work to create the new experience. And what they'll do is they'll use kind of the data. They'll go, okay, I know that this person has a history of people that, let's give another kind of example where a client had to completely take care of themselves. And so their expectation is that nobody else is going to have empathy towards them. Nobody else is going to lend a hand. And so they may as well not even communicate distress. They may as well not ask for help. And in fact, they may as well just make the other person feel good. Now, a counselor could have a knowing of that, and they could notice the countertransference, which can sometimes be to actually be a little bit dismissing or distant in turn, because people who have this kind of expectation can give a lot of push away signals. So there can be different reactions, but a counselor may also be able to take that map and go, okay, so here's the person's expectation, completely understandable. Here's the way that they bring it in with me. And if I were to follow my part of the script, I would be a little bit less accessible and I would let them take care of my needs. And so, what I'm going to do is I'm going to be really available. I'm going to be really empathic. If I see them shivering a little bit, I'm going to just extend them a blanket. I'm not going to ask. I'm going to do some nurturing things and I'm going to do everything that I can to be almost like the opposite to what the person's experience was. And that can be another really, really powerful way of actually, I don't even know that it's interrupting a countertransference, but like resisting that tide and really working to create a new experience. And so, a lot of different ways of doing it collaboratively, a lot of different ways that some people choose to do it kind of just by extending implicitly what they think is missing. I think some of my favorite scenarios are when I'm really able to notice the feelings that a client evokes in me. And believe me, if you're a client, you evoke feelings in your counselor. Some of those feelings are probably quite similar to feelings that you may evoke with other people. It's not on purpose, it's not a choice, but it is such a fantastic thing for me when I'm able to use that information and be able to somehow, with the client, collaborate to co create a different experience. And sometimes we can even almost make a game of it of let's just notice, let's just call it out, let's just have a gesture when we start to do this thing. you know if one of us notices it, let's just notice it, let's empathically interrupt it, let's notice what's happening for both of us that's motivating this, and let's find a way forward. So there's so much more to say about this. There's so many different maps about transference and countertransference. It's something that I am passionate about understanding, helping others understand too, because it's like magic. It is such a cool key. And not just in therapy relationships, in coaching relationships, and any kind of relationships that you have, there's some kind of undercurrent happening underneath the surface. And it can be so cool to work to detect those patterns, to work to notice like what's happening. Um, how are other people responding to you, like characteristically? And kind of learning what you might be doing to contribute to that and working to break the script, and also noticing like what others seem to evoke in everybody around them, and noticing if there's something that you can do to notice it a little differently, or to behave towards them a little differently. So really, really cool. If you've had experiences with this, like really splendid ones, really hard ones, you've never had words for this, but you know that this has been going on and this like sparks some kind of insight, please comment. If there's something unclear here, please comment. I think sometimes I start with one concept, I end up talking about three or four, and I really want to make sure that I'm giving some clear ideas and some clear kinds of things to be aware of, some clear action points that hopefully really offer a lot of hope. The big hope with transference, countertransference is when you find somebody that you can work it through with, you can really walk out with so much more freedom in your relationships, where it's not like that script necessarily goes away, but you can certainly put it like in your desk drawer and not have it be like written on your forehead in every relationship, like this is how I expect to be treated, right? Like you start to have some choices. You start to know that that script is there if you for some reason want it, and that you really have the ability to break that script. You have the ability to make a whole new one. You have the ability to completely change how it is that your relationships unfold, and to feel different in your reactions towards others, and for others to feel different in their reactions towards you. It can take time, it can take work, it can take some frustration. Sometimes it can take a helper who is willing to enter into that struggle with you a little bit, because often it's not like you're coming to like a magical person who knows how to just get out of these impasses without the slightest difficulty, but sometimes you're coming to a person who's really prone to their own kinds of dynamics towards you, and you can actually really enter into that struggle together mindfully, and really notice the ways that you are evoking some familiar things in each other, and really work to disentangle that. And obviously, it's your helper's job to be willing to seek consultation. It's their job to be willing to do what they need to do to come in with compassion, and to learn how to help you be aware of these impasses, or to behave in ways that help you to break out of them. Um, Anyway, I'd love to hear any kind of experiences that you've had, good or bad, with this, and anything else that might be useful for me to clarify. I look forward to talking to you soon. Thanks.